Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajadanarandana Yashodanandana Brajadanarandana Jamuna Tira Vanantari Jamuna Tira Vanantari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajadanarandana Yashodanandana Brajadanarandana Jamuna Tira Vanantari Jamuna Tira Vanantari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare bolo. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Gaura Premanande, Jayam Vishupad Paramahamsa, Parivrajagacharya Stotra Sri Simar, His Divine Grace, Shirabai Charanarvind Bhakti Vedanta Swami, Sri Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki, Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur ki, Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda ki, Transcendental Book Distribution ki, Jani Thai Gold. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and to Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Taksuranmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Ditam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Param Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakanvitam Scha Hai Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Vyaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us first offer our respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayashabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. By regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering service unto the pure devotee, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahmasamitam Uttama Charitam Shakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swasya Namaha. This Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Grantaraj, the king of all Vedic literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God, Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhara, Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Sarabhyai Namaha. Om Sarabhyai Namaha. Om Sarabhyai Namaha. Mukam karoti vachalam pangom langayate girim. Yat kripat maham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Yat kripat maham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our daily Srimad Bhagavatam class, reading from first canto, chapter 3, entitled Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And today we are reading text number 30. Yes. Etad rupam bhagavato hi arupasya chid atmanaha maya gunair virachitam. Mahadadibhir atmani etad rupam bhagavato yarupasya chid atmanaha maya gunair virachitam. Mahadadibhir atmani etad rupam bhagavato yarupasya Chidatmanaha Maya Gunair Virachitam Mahadadibir Atmani Etad Rupam Bhagavato Yarupasya Chidatmanaha Maya Gunair Virachitam Mahadadibir Atmani.
Etadrupam bhagavato yarupasya chidatmanaha maya gunair virachitam mahat adibhir atmani
Etad Rupam Bhagavato Yarupasya Chidatmanaha Maya Gunair Virachitam Mahadadibhiratmani. Etad Rupam Bhagavato Yarupasya Chidatmanaha Maya Gunair Virachitam Mahadadibhiratmani. Etad Rupam Bhagavato Yarupasya Chidatmanaha Maya Gunair Virachitam Mahadadibhiratmani. Etad Rupam Bhagavato Yarupasya Chidatmanaha Maya Gunair Virachitam Mahadadibhiratmani. Etat, all those Rupam, forms, Bhagavataha, of the Lord. He certainly Arupasya, of one who has no material form. Chitatmanaha, of the transcendence. Maya, material energy. Gunai, by the qualities. Virachitam, manufactured. Mahat adibihi, with the ingredients of matter. Atmani, in the self. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. The conception of the Virat, universal form of the Lord, is as appearing in the material world, is imaginary. It is to enable the less intelligent and neophytes to adjust to the idea of the Lord's having form. But factually, the Lord has no material form. Kindly repeat after me. The conception of the Virat universal form of the Lord as appearing in the material world is imaginary. It is to enable the less intelligent and neophytes to adjust to the idea of the Lord's having form. But factually, the Lord has no material form. Purport. We have a rainy and dark day. It's a rainy season. What to expect? So purport, the conception of the Lord known as the Virat Rupa or Vishvarupa or the Virat Rupa is particularly not mentioned along with the various incarnations of the Lord, because all the incarnations of the Lord mentioned above are transcendental, and there is not a tinge of materialism in their bodies. There is no difference between the body and self as there is in the conditioned soul. The Virat Rupa is conceived for those who are just neophyte worshippers. For them, the material Virat Rupa is presented, and it will be explained in the second canto. In the Virat Rupa, the material manifestations of different planets have been conceived as his legs, hands, etc. Actually, all such descriptions are for the neophytes. The neophytes cannot conceive of anything beyond matter. The material conception of the Lord is not counted in the list of his factual form or supersoul. The Lord is within each and every material form, even within the atoms. But the outward material form is but an imagination, both for the Lord and for the living being. The present forms of the conditioned souls are also not factual. The conclusion is that the material conception of the body of the Lord as Virat is imaginary. Both the Lord and the living beings are living spirits and have original spiritual bodies. Translation again. The conception of the Virat universal form of the Lord as appearing in the material world is imaginary. It is to enable the less intelligent and neophytes to adjust to the idea of the Lord's having form. But factually the Lord has no material form. So when it is explained, as it is here, that the Lord has no material form, that does not mean that the Lord has no form. Krishna very nicely explains in the Bhagavad Gita, avadananti mam buddha manushim tanumasritam. Foolish people think that I have taken an ordinary human form or ordinary human body. And then he continues, avajananti mamutha manushim tanumasitam param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheswaram. That people do not understand uh, the supreme position or divine position. So Srila Prabhupada makes reference here to neophyte. There are three types of, thank you, three types of devotees. Kanista, Madhyam, and Uttam. Kanista Adhikari, Madhyam Adhikari, and Uttam Adhikari. When describing the level of Kanista, Kanista is also translated as materialistic devotee. Materialistic devotee. One who cannot actually properly understand the transcendental dimension. Therefore, he's called materialistic devotee. What are the two characteristics of a materialistic or neophyte devotee? Two things are lacking in a materialistic devotee. And therefore, Prabhupada explains that position is actually not very secure. One should not, in the beginning, it's natural that one is at the level of neophyte. When we join Krishna consciousness, we are neophytes. We don't understand so many things about transcendental matters. So Prabhupada is explaining that one should not remain on that platform of materialistic devotee for a long time. Or in other words, the longer one remains a neophyte devotee, there's all good chances of falling down. So what are the two characteristics? One is that one's shraddha is very weak. One has very less faith. And Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, ashraddhadhana purusha dharmasya sya parantapa aprapyamam nivartante mrityu samsaravartmani. In the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there is shraddha, faith, and ashraddha, no faith or lack of faith. So in that verse, Krishna is explaining those who are lacking in faith, they cannot understand actually about dharma and their fate. Those who are lacking in faith, their fate is not very good because they will be forced to remain in the material world due to their material conception, material understanding. So that is one characteristic. A neophyte devotee is lacking in faith. His conviction is not strong. And it is connected actually with the second reason, second characteristic of a neophyte devotee is that he has less understanding of Shastra. He is lacking proper understanding of the Vedic literatures. And therefore that also contributes to his being less convinced. So therefore, these two are very interconnected. So the Virat Rupa form of the Lord, which Prabhupada describes in the second canto, is referred to and described in more detail. It is not, it is an imaginary form. And Prabhupada goes on to state something very important for all of us, that the present form we have is also imaginary. This body we have now, that we like to look at in the mirror sometimes, oh, um, it is not um, our real we. It is a false we. It is a imaginary form. It is an imaginary form of who we really are. This is the wonderful nature of Maya. Maya, although it is, it is described as we were discussing, what is not, but we are convinced that it is actually so. We are convinced. Everyone takes their body and their material situation very seriously. Whereas someone who cultivates proper knowledge, he sees beyond the body. He sees things in a different way. He sees things according to Shastra. Shastra Chakshu. Shastra Chakshu. Seeing things, therefore, with transcendental vision. Otherwise, if we don't develop this transcendental vision or transcendental understanding, we will always be in problem. We will always be in anxiety. As long as we remain on the material platform, then we will be fearful. That is one of the prominent features of those who are on the bodily platform. They are constantly fearing what will happen to my body, what will happen to my beautiful body. So this development of consciousness is only possible when one comes in contact with this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. This development of consciousness is only possible when one comes in contact with a personality like Srila Prabhupada and all of our acharyas. They will see things very differently. And there's, one particular example, there are many, that I've mentioned before, but it's good to, it makes the point. One time when, in the early days, when in Mayapur, right now in Sridham Mayapur, there are so much of development, so many buildings are there. But in the very early, of course, in the beginning, there was only the small hut, which is still there, where Srila Prabhupada was staying, and where the deities of Sri Sri Radhamadava, small deities, at that time there were no big deities, the small deities of Sri Sri Radhamadava and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were staying in that small hut. Prabhupada was staying with them in the small hut. And then soon afterwards, there was that small hut, and on the other side, close by, there was a go-down construction building, because it was in the early days. And of course, the first two things were constructed in the beginning, and both are still there, of course. And one is what is called the boundary wall. If you go to Mayapur, the boundary wall is as you first enter on both sides. And devotees in the early days, they would be staying in the boundary wall because there was no other place to stay, actually. And the boundary wall, it was just small rooms. And for going to the bathroom, you had to go outside. There was one place, common bathroom for men, common bathroom for ladies. And then the shower there was no structure. The shower were like, they had a series of hand pumps. You would have to use your hand to pump up the water, and outside, either in the sun or in the rain, you would take bath. And then the other structure, the first major structure that came up, is what we know today as the Lotus building, which is having the name Mayapur Chandradai Mandir. So, in the early days, actually, some devotees were staying there, but then very soon Prabhupada decided that no devotees should stay there. It was guest house for important guests. And then the other main structure that was built was, at that time we were calling it the Long Building. First was the Lotus Building, 4 stories, ground and plus 4, I believe. And then the Long Building, which was, it became known as the longest building in Nadia district. They were very long, yeah, which is what we call the Chakra building right now. So when there was, whenever Prabhupada was in Mayapur, if the weather was not so good as like this morning, every morning Prabhupada would take his morning walk. So normally he would go walking either in the fields close by, and if the weather was not good, he would walk around in the building, in the Lotus building. So one time, Prabhupada, whenever he would walk, of course, whenever he would take his morning walk, so many devotees would also be with him, mostly like sannyasis or GBC devotees. Yeah. So this one particular morning, Prabhupada was walking, and Prabhupada was, being fully transcendental. Fully transcendental means fully awake. Fully transcendental means fully conscious. That is the meaning of Krishna consciousness. Fully awake and fully conscious. So, as he was walking around, they would more or less circumambulate. And then at one corner, Prabhupada stopped So whenever Prabhupada would stop, everybody would stop. And sometimes devotees were advised, don't walk too close to Prabhupada because sometimes he stops very abruptly. And it it happens sometimes that the devotee, practically fell on Prabhupada. So anyways, he stopped on this corner, and then, devotees, one had to be there to really pick up on the mood and the vibrations. But every single word that Prabhupada would say, devotees were just like, just glued. And those from the back were leaning on other devotees to try and hear what Prabhupada would be saying. So anyway, he stopped and he made the following statement. I can see it, but you cannot. The devotees looked at each other and what is, trying to understand what is Prabhupada saying. And they couldn't understand. So no one said anything. So they went around, Prabhupada continued walking. Second time, at the same place, Prabhupada stopped. Srila Prabhupada uh, uh, who was staying, his room is still there on that floor and other floors as well. And sometimes they would slam the door and it would make, when a door slams, it makes a big noise. It would say that heart, it's very troublesome, very disturbing, especially Prabhupada was either having meetings or writing or like that. So in other words, one who is advanced person, his consciousness is very different from our ordinary consciousness. He sees things differently, and whenever something is not in line or not proper, then he will notice it. So that is why the longer we remain on the bodily platform of this imaginary body that we have, that is why that expression is also there, that Prabhupada was the first one to help us understand that it is not that we only dream at night. At night time it's quite natural that we dream. Anyone here dream at night? Dream. Everybody dreams. You dream? Yeah. You have good dreams or bad dreams? Good dreams? So Prabhupada used to explain that when we get up in the morning, generally we don't remember. We forget. We don't give any importance to our dream unless Krishna appeared to us in the dream. Then there are some transcendental dreams, but for the vast majority of people, our dreams are not transcendental. So our dream, we don't give importance and we forget. So in the same way that when we wake up in the morning, we forget about our night dream, when we go to sleep, we also forget about this body, isn't it? We actually leave this body. Prabhupada explains that the subtle body, we all have different types of bodies. We all have this gross body that's sitting here right now, but inside this body we have the subtle body, and then we have the spiritual body. You see? So when we go to sleep at night, we forget about this gross body. So therefore, Prabhupada would explain that the uh, conditioned living entity, one who is not Krishna conscious, he is wasting his time in night dreaming, and he's wasting his time in daydreaming. Means we are dreaming 24 hours a day. What a horrible situation. We don't understand it. This day activity when we're not Krishna conscious is also a dream. So we're dreaming all the time. Means we are in Maya all the time. That's terrible. No wonder, to be in Maya means to be to actually be insane. Just like in psychology, there is a word called schizophrenia. Do you know what is schizophrenia? Not expected to know. Schizophrenia means that one believes himself to be what he is not. Like some people will say, well, I am Benjamin Franklin, one of the four, founding fathers of America, or I am this, or I am that. Some people actually, and they need to see a doctor, psychiatrist, and they will generally be given some medication so that they can come to understand that they're not actually, I am, president of the country. Uh, People will think like this, especially nowadays. Mental illness, mental disease is one of the most severe diseases in the world, you see. And that is why some years back there was one article in Back to Godhead magazine, and the title of the article was, "Who is Crazy?" The devotees are crazy, or the non-devotees are crazy? Because those who are non-devotees, when they see devotees, I'm sure you might have experienced that with some of your friends when you became devotees, or even family members. What happened to him? He was like an ordinary person just up until he went to the Hare Krishna temple, up until he started to chant Hare Krishna. So they will accuse us of being crazy. And of course, we likewise, when we look at someone who is not a devotee, we understand that he's on the bodily platform. He is accepting this body, as mentioned here, as an imaginary body. Maya. So therefore, we can only come to proper understanding by what is called developed consciousness. And one who is fortunate to come in contact with this knowledge can therefore become fully aware, fully conscious, fully convinced that he is not this body. One time Prabhupada asked the devotees, "Are you convinced that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead?" Because unless we actually come to that point of fully being convinced, and that will only manifest, that will only be there when we act on that platform, isn't it? we read all the time that we're not the body. But after leaving Bhagavatam class, we generally tend to act on the bodily platforms, isn't it? So our success in understanding, in fashionably understanding that we're not the body, will be there when all the time, more and more, we act not on the bodily platform, but on the spiritual transcendental platform. So the point being made here is that this Virata Rupa form is explained in the Bhagavatam to give an opportunity, because people who are not, let's say, believers, people who don't know about God, they do become, like so many people are attracted to nature, material nature, because Krishna's creation, this material world, material nature, is very attractive, is very powerful also. So, but we should know it is the energy of Krishna. Uh, so this particular Virata Rupa form, uh, Vishwarup, universal form of the Lord, is giving a hint. It is described to give a hint to those who are materialistic that God actually has an original spiritual transcendental form, which is amazingly very human-like, as Krishna demonstrated 5,000 years ago when he appeared and performed his pastimes in Vrindavan. So, but that form is a very mysterious form, because although Krishna's form looks is like identical to ordinary human form, he is beyond that form. He is not that material form. And it's practically bewildering, because if we look at the pastime of Krishna on the battle of Kurukshetra, at one point when grandfather Bhishmadev had promised to Duryodhana was getting a little bit upset that grandfather Bhishmadev, you've been fighting now for the last so many days, and the Pandavas are still living. You're not fighting to your capacity. So then Bhishmadev, this is very insulting actually, if you tell that to someone who's a Kshatriya. So therefore Bhishmadev promised, okay, tomorrow I will finish the Pandavas, beginning with Arjuna. And so that next day, Arjuna was in trouble and his chariot was broken by the arrows of grandfather Bhishmadev. And we know that it's at that time that Krishna, seeing that Arjuna was about to be killed, he got off the chariot and picked up, that famous scene of Krishna running towards grandfather Bhishmadev, and he was being shot actually with arrows, and it describes how blood was coming out of Krishna's body. And one will say, well, if Krishna has a transcendental body, how come blood is coming out of his body? And what is the answer? It is transcendental blood. It's not ordinary. Krishna, Janma karma same divyam. My appearance and my activities of, getting pierced and blood coming out, it is divyam, transcendental. That can only be understood by devotees. Yeah. So we'll just read the verse again here, if there's any. 30. Translation: the conception of the Virat, universal form of the Lord, as appearing in the material world is imaginary. It is to enable the less intelligent and neophytes to adjust to the idea of the Lord has no material form. Any comment? Question? Chinmoy, any question? No? Not today. Maybe tomorrow. Napak? No. Yes.
In Bhagavatam, they describe that different demigods are situated in different parts of the Virat Rupa.
In the Bhagavatam, it describes that the demigods are different parts of the Virat Rupa.
How can we understand this?
No, in the Bhagavatam, um, mm, rather in the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna, on the request of Arjuna, manifested the universal form, that also, that was, we could say, different manifestation, which included uh, so many different um, personalities, including demigods. Demigods are, uh, we can say, just like we have a gross material body, they have a different kind of body, but material. Uh, so uh, whatever is material, whether gross or subtle, is also imaginary, is also temporary. So the demigods, it's like we were discussing, I think, day before yesterday, how any living entity can assume or take up the position of Lord Brahma or other demigods as well. So, including the demigods and, let's say, humans on this planet, these bodies that we are exhibiting, they are all connected with the material energy, with the material world. So the demigods, like us, they are jivas. Lord Brahma is a jiva, in the category of jiva tattva. So it is part of the universe, part of the prakriti, material energy, and so that means that everything which is uh, within the material world is temporary, although Prakriti is described in the Bhagavad Gita as an eternal reality. Prakriti is eternal, but sometimes it is manifest and sometimes it is not manifest. When it is manifest, and if we identify with that matter, then that is imaginary. It is not in relation to our original, eternal nature as spirit souls. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, we can close here. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Gaura Premanandi.